Welcome to the Sam's Dreams Themes tutorial on how to use my Easter Monday backdrop. So this is what you receive when you purchase the backdrop, and our tutorial today is going to show you how to turn it into this, which is my example on Etsy. So warming it up, adding some kind of pinky burgundy reds to it, color balancing out a few things and adding some shadows. The photo that I started out with was this right here. And if you need to learn how to cut things out, I do have a tutorial on that on my YouTube channel that you're welcome to check out so that you can easily do that. There are many ways of cutting out on Photoshop. You could also just Google how to cut out a photo in Photoshop. You can use the select tool. You can use the select and mask. My personal preference is to use the pen tool and a tablet and to cut it out that way because I'll get really nice sharp edges. So I'm going to go back over to the background here, and the first thing I'm going to do is add the girls that I have already cut out just to make this a little bit quicker for you. So I'm going to go to File, Place Linked, and you can see that I've got lots of stock here. And where did I put it? Here it is. So I'm going to hit Place. And there are my girls. In the newest Photoshop, which I haven't upgraded to yet because my work does this for me, you don't need to hold down the Shift key. In any older versions of Photoshop, you have to hold down the Shift key. So I'm going to hold it down to resize them. Otherwise, if I don't do that, they'll go all wonky on me. But as I said, the newest version of Photoshop, I just lost it. The newest version of Photoshop doesn't make you use the Shift key anymore. That's going to be weird for me to get adjusted to because I use it all the time out of habit. Try this again. And I'm going to kind of use the lamb and the crosses to get them to be the right size. So I don't, if I think about the girls standing in front of a cross beside the lamb, right up next to it, I'm pretty happy with that sizing right there. I think I could even go, maybe I should have made that lamb smaller. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with that. And I could make them a little bit bigger if I've got them further back. But I do want the girls to be placed where the picture is sharp. So the plane of focus is over here. And I do want the girls to be on a sharp area. It wouldn't make sense to have them over here in a blurry area because I'd have to make them blurry too. And I don't want them right against anything. I want the crosses to be able to stand out and then the girls on their own. And this is going to be personal preference for you on how you want to do this according to the size of your subjects and so forth. So I'm going to put them right here and I'm going to hit enter. And one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to make them blend into the grass a little bit more. I'm going to put a layer mask on them. And I'm going to go to my brushes and I'm going to make it a dark brush. Some people like to use a soft brush, so you can adjust your hardness here. They like to use a soft brush at 50 to 100%, and they like to just soften things that way. And I'll zoom in for you. The thing I don't like about this is it doesn't show the texture of the grass and it just doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to undo that. And what I prefer to do is I prefer to grab a grass brush. So I got these brushes off of DeviantArt. You can see I've really got a thing for brushes here. Sometimes I have to, it takes me a few minutes to go through all of them. I keep organizing them and they just keep going on me. There we go. Okay. So my favorites, as I said, I grabbed these from DeviantArt. The ones I like are the flat ones like this. And then I just go at the bottom, and that gives me the grass texture that I like. And I just want a little bit at the very bottom of their dresses. I don't want it to be too much. And you can see that I got rid of this girl's legs completely. And I did that for the flowers and for the lamb. And it gives a much more natural look. Anytime you've got grass, do this. So much more natural. I love that. I'm going to, like on a PC, it would be right click. On my Mac, it's control click. And it won't let me apply the layer mask, which means I need to rasterize the layer first. I'm going to hover over this area, right click or control click it with the Mac, rasterize a layer, and then I'm going to apply the layer mask. And I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath them. I don't want it to be harsh, but I do want it to be there. There are lots of different ways of applying shadows. When I've got something bright like this, it's going to be a little bit trickier to add. So this is the way I do it. I do Command J to copy the layer. And then I go to my dodge and burn tools over here. I'm going to go to burn. And I start out with highlights all the time. 14, 15% is fine. It's soft. And I'm going to start kind of rubbing this back and forth without clicking as I do it. And I'm just going to rub it back and forth, and I'm going to lift it and click again and go back and forth with this. And then I'm going to click it again. And then once I've burned in some of the highlights, I'm going to go to my midtones. And I'm going to start doing the same thing. And this is only affecting the grass under the girls. So this doesn't affect, this does not affect their dresses, which is good. And that's pretty good. And it's definitely darker than I would normally do. And I will be fixing that. So don't worry if this is too dark for you or too much, because there are ways of fixing it. So that's pretty good. Because there aren't a lot of major shadows anywhere else, but I do want one under them. So before, after. And I can take this and I can bring the opacity down. So there's just a little bit of a shadow. That's one way of dealing with it. Another thing you can do is put the layer mask on it. Use your black brush. I'm going to go to a soft brush. And I can also remove little bits of that shadow so it's not as thick, it's just under them. And that is subtle. I'm much more happy with that. I could still lighten that shadow. And there we go. There's just a little shadow under them to give them a bit of depth. If I'm happy with the placement, then I will usually flatten. There's just one thing I'm going to do beforehand. I'm going to color balance them a little bit first. So if I click on the girls layer, I can go right here, and I'm going to go to my hue saturation. Often I don't use a lot of saturated colors in my work. I like to mute my colors a little bit. So sometimes I'll bring the whole thing down just a little bit, but I don't want them to turn black and white. I don't want them to be fluorescent. And if I turn this up, I can see that there's a lot of blues and greens in her dress. So I could bring the whole thing down the tiniest bit, like a smidge. But what I'm actually going to go after are the blues in her dress so that I get a more neutral dress. So now that I've selected just blues, I'm going to bring those down a bit. And the cyans, There's a lot of cyan in there and I want it to be more neutral, just white. So I can bring the cyan down and then brighten it if I want. I should note, the way I'm able to do this just on the girls is by clicking this right here before I started. If I didn't click this, it would affect the whole picture. But since it's just on there, I lock it down to just this layer right here. There is a lot of green in their hair, and I'm going to show you what happens though. I've done this before with this image. Oh, there's still green in that dress. I'm okay with that. But there's actually, it wasn't greens in the hair that was bothering it. It was the yellows. And I could do this, but I'm going to get a lot of gray when I do that. So I'm going to fix up the hair separately using a different method of color balancing. So that's one of the ways that I do like to color balance. And then I'm going to select these two together. So hold down your command key. I'm sorry, I don't know what that would be on a PC. And I'm going to right click or control click. And I'm going to merge those layers right there. For the hair, for the greenness of the hair here, if you know about the color wheel and you know about opposites on the color wheel, you know that the opposite of green is red. And that will neutralize that hair out by adding a little bit of red or burgundy on top of it. So I'm going to go over to this flower right here. It's already got kind of a brown red for me. And I'm going to go to solid color. Okay, it's using the color that I already dropped. You could also change the color right now if you wanted. Okay, and then I'm going to change this to color under the blending panel. And then I'm going to double click this white square right here to invert it. And now I'm going to paint on the opposite color with a paintbrush. A white brush. I'm going to make it nice and subtle, like about 22%. And I'm just going to go on. I don't want to change the hair color necessarily. I am going to go over all of that hair right there. If your subject is too red, you can alternately add a little bit of green to it. So I know it looks like I'm turning their hair red. Don't worry. I will just adjust that layer in a second. But I do want all of that green out. You could also put your opacity down even more if you want. So there's the hair. And I'm going to bring my opacity down. And you can make an action for this yourself. So that's about where I want it. I'm going to paint it off any areas that are still a little bit too red for me. And there we go. There's our before and our after to get rid of some of that green. And you can paint on all sorts of other colors if you want, if you wanted them to be blonder, lighter, darker, whatever it is. So I'm going to command to select those two layers, right click, control click, merge the layers. And then the final thing I could do, their dresses are a little bit dark. I could go to filter, camera raw. There are lots of ways to lighten or darken something too. See, that's not the way I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to my adjustment, and I'm going to go to brightness contrast. I'm going to lock it down so that I'm only dealing with the girls and not the whole picture. And I'm going to bring up the brightness so that I get a little bit more in their dresses. And I'm going to bring the opacity down. No, I'm going to leave it up. I'm going to double click on this to invert it. And then I will just paint the brightness on where I want it. So I'll leave it there at 22. And now I'm just going to go on and start painting them a little bit brighter. I'm going to leave the little girl's white dress, but I don't want them to be overly dark. Oh, that's why it's not working. White brush, there we go. Much easier. The subject should often be the brightest part of your work. And there we go. We can adjust some of that stuff later, but they have brightened a little bit. So there's my before and my after. And I got a little bit more detail there. Great. Once I am sure I'm happy with my colors, I'm happy with my shadows, I'm happy with all the basics, I will flatten this. And I know some artists who do not flatten till the end. One option you have is to save this version first. And that's what I make my students at the high school do. So layer, flatten. I am happy with that. Now I'm going to add some color tones to this to get it to that warmer look right here. And see that they're placed just a bit differently, and that's fine. So I'm going to go to, first I'm going to select one of the colors that I want to make it a little bit warmer. I'm going to go back to this flower right here. I could also pick kind of a burgundy from their dresses. I could pick like a purple. You could pick whatever color you want to add on top of this, but I do like this burgundy for this one. So I've selected that burgundy. I'm going to go to layer, new fill layer, gradient. Hit OK. And I'm going to adjust the scale here so that this goes over top of the whole image, more or less, and not just the top or the bottom. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to go to, you could go to different modes. I'm going to do screen mode right there. Another one you could try could be soft light. You can see that that makes it darker and more dramatic. Yeah, overlay is terrible. I'm going to stick with screen right here because it gives a little bit of the matte look that I've got here. But this is a bit strong for me. So I'm going to bring it down because I just want a little bit of that color. I don't want a ton. And you can see what a difference it makes to the color tone of the image. And I want it to be subtle. And I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go to layer, flatten. And then I'm going to maybe try one more and see how it looks. I'm going to grab the yellow right here that I see. And I'm going to do the exact same thing again. New fill layer, gradient. Okay. I'm going to adjust my scale. Okay. I could have also done this just for the top. And then I'm going to change my blending mode. Now that just makes it too washed out. I don't like that. I'm going to try soft light right there. And there we go. It warms up the image quite a bit. Probably too much for me. So I'm going to bring that down. And again, feel free to try this with many different colors. If these colors aren't your thing, do something different. It just warms it up the littlest bit so that it is about the same right there. Layer, flatten. And one last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little bit more drama. So I'm going to go right here to my adjustment layer panel. I'm going to do brightness and contrast. And I'm going to up my contrast just the littlest bit. Might not be your thing, and that's okay. So it's almost exactly the same as that original. The girls were a little bit lighter there. And if I wanted the contrast to be off of them a bit, I'll just make sure I'm clicked right there. Go to my black brush. I'll leave it at that. Maybe I'll bring it up to 50. And I can just paint it off the girls. So white paint's on, black paint's off. And then I have that contrast around them, but not on them. And I'm very happy with that. And so I will save this as a JPEG, and that was quick and easy. Stay tuned to my listings because I will start adding more video tutorials to them as I have the time. And keep looking out. I'm always posting new stuff online for you guys to use for your clients to give them some dreamy, magical looks for your photography.